Yo, what's going on, guys? Toxico Cereal. Welcome back to another Brawl Stars video. It's been a very long time. I'm very sorry. I've really slowed down on the Brawl Stars gaming. I just had a period where I just didn't want to play with the mutations and all that. I've kind of been playing a little bit. Like I did play last season, completed the pass, but the previous season, no, I didn't play really at all. I didn't buy the Brawl Pass. I didn't finish it. Like, I just didn't feel like playing the game because the mutations for me is what just made it unplayable. But I've been starting to play again, and we're going to be ranking all 37 Hypercharges. I think there's 37 of them. I don't know, because I really haven't been playing, but I've gotten a good perspective on how good the newer Hyperchargers are, because I usually do one every time there's new Hypercharges, but I didn't do it last time, so I thought, let's do it again. But yeah, I'm back. I'm going to try to get back into the uploading phase, because it has been a long time. So, starting off with a nice simple one. So, without further ado, we're going to get straight into the tier list. It's A, S, A, B, C, D, F. I don't really want to edit anything, so let's just go. Starting off with Piper's Hypercharge. I haven't really seen it. I don't have it, but it seems like a really good Hypercharge. I don't think it's like game-breaking, but the damage boost she gets is crazy. She deals a lot of damage already as is with that damage boost. She like deals a ridiculous amount of damage. Combine that with the snappy sniping star power, and it's a decent Hypercharge because it knocks people back on both spots, drops more bombs, destroys more terrain. Overall, it's a really good Hypercharge for Piper. I don't think it's completely that strong compared to some of the other Hyperchargers, but for me, it's got to be an A tier. Next up, we have Sprout's Hypercharge. Now, in Heist, it's really, really underrated. I love this Hypercharge in Heist, especially on Pit Stop when it was in the rotation. But other than that, this Hypercharge is actually so bad. Like, it offers no value. You use it for just the stat buffs. So for me, it's going to remain in the F tier. It's trash other than dealing insane damage to the Heist. You don't really want to play Sprout in Heist, but it's actually very underrated if you get Sprout on a decent map. Next up, we have Barley's Hypercharge. Barley's Hypercharge actually is not terrible. Like, it's very large and it deals some pretty good damage, but it does take a while to cycle to. So, for me, it's going to go in the B tier. It does offer some value. Next up, we have Jean's Hypercharge, one that I did buy with my gems, and honestly, it's really kind of Like, it's okay. It gives a decent damage boost to Jean, but majority of the time, you don't want to pull 2 or 3 enemies in. You just want to pull 1, because that will help you change the game. If you pull multiple and Jean's alone or doesn't have great help, they're just going to swarm you and you basically just killed yourself. So for me, this Hypercharge doesn't offer the greatest value. Like, you can make some good plays with it, but it's going to go in the D tier. I don't find very much potential with it. Next up, we have Nita's Hypercharge, and Bruce is super tanky. It only takes her two supers to get to it. Bruce is faster, does more damage, and has more health. It's just an ammo waster, and it can help Nita get to her next Hypercharge. It's easy S tier for me, easily. Next up is Charlie's Hypercharge, and Charlie's Hypercharge has gotten nerfed yet again because the Spiders gadget recently just got nerfed, and you know her Hypercharge spawns 3 spiders. And even though it does cycle, it does cycle pretty quickly. I think it's 1.67 supers. With all the nerfs Charlie's been getting, it just takes longer to cycle to her Hypercharge. And for me, it's going to stay in the F tier. It is going to go above Sprouts, but it's just, I don't find very much value from it. Next up, we have Big Chongus' Hypercharge, Frank, who is one of the best brawlers in the game right now behind Lily and Meg. I would say Meg and Lily are better, but Frank's Hypercharge is so broken. A full 360 circle that is basically impossible to miss it once you're on top of the enemy. And also you get the damage boost, the speed boost, like everything. And then he does so much damage with that rework, especially with the power grab star power. Yeah, it's one of the best Hypercharges in the game, without a doubt. Next up, we have Jackie's Hypercharge. Now, Jackie's Hypercharge is still really good. I really like this Hypercharge. It's not as good as it used to be because they nerfed the damage on it, but it's still a very vital Hypercharge for Jackie because it gives her the speed boost and it also slows the enemies, which gives her an easier opportunity to catch up to the enemies. So for me, it's still a decent Hypercharge. I would put it above Barley's in the B tier. Next up, we have Buzz's Hypercharge. Buzz's Hypercharge is really good. It's not as broken as what the heck they did it on, or before it was even released, but turning in a Spider Buzz, going across the walls, and basically traversing the whole map how you want to, is very strong, and it also doesn't take Buzz that long to cycle. Buzz can really quickly cycle through supers, so for me, it's one of the best Hypercharges. I don't think it's S tier, but it's definitely A tier. Next up, we have Shelly's Hypercharge. And Shelly's Hypercharge is so boring, but it is okay. It gives her more damage, it makes it wider, and it helps her cycle her super a little bit better, but it's not the greatest Hypercharge. So for me, it's going to be in the D tier, but it is going to go above Jean's. Next up, we have BB's Hypercharge. And BB has a very good Hypercharge. It doesn't take that long to cycle to, and it actually is very good for team wiping because it spawns 2 bubbles. They're kind of unpredictable at sometimes. So for me, very good Hypercharge. I'm going to put it below Piper's in the A tier. Very vital Hypercharge for BB. Next up, we have Emz's Hypercharge. And Emz's Hypercharge, based on what I've seen, is not the greatest. Like, it helps her, that's for sure, but I feel like the knockback once she activates a super isn't the greatest because once you use the way I use Emz's super is I don't use it when they're directly on top of me. I use it when they're almost on the outside of it. That way I can pressure them and prevent them from escaping even more. But it also takes M's 3 supers to get, and it can be very challenging to cycle M's supers. So for me, I don't find the greatest value in this Hypercharge, so I'm going to put it in between Jean's and Shelly's. I think it's kind of an overrated one. Next up, we have Sandy's Hypercharge. And Sandy's Hypercharge, even though it did just get a nerf, easily still has to be an S tier Hypercharge. That speed boost and the mute, once you throw that super, is so insanely good. It's very good for Sandy and his teammates, and it also just provides even more pressure towards the enemy team. It's very, very easy to cycle with this Hypercharge still, in my opinion, because Sandy's super, since it's a very tanky meta, can get supers relatively pretty quickly. Next up is Fang's Hypercharge. Now, Fang's Hypercharge is really, really strong. The only issue, though, for me is it's been nerfed to basically oblivion that you almost never get it in the game anymore. So, don't get me wrong, very strong Hypercharge if you get it, but I have to take in consideration of how fast it cycles. And Fang's, you'd be lucky if you get it once in a game, especially with the nerf to the fresh kick star power is not charging it anymore. It's really hard to get this Hypercharge. So for that reason, I'm going to have to drop it all the way to the B tier. Still a good Hypercharge if you get it, which I feel like most of the time you will, but not every game. I don't think so. Next up, we have Bull's Hypercharge. And Bull has a decent Hypercharge. It's not crazy good, but it does help him a lot because it makes him a lot tankier, gives him the more damage. It basically helps him in a lot of aspects. So, but it's not like crazy game breaking. So for me, it's going to be the first C tier. Next up, we have Colette's Hypercharge, and even though it finally got a nerf, I was really hoping to get a nerf. It's still a very strong Hypercharge, especially melting any brawler if you hit both her and the Spirit. It's just a lot of damage, and then in Heist, it's the best Hypercharge in the game for Heist. It shreds the Heist safe, so for me, it still has to be at least an A tier. I don't think it's going to be S tier anymore, but for me, it's really, really strong Hypercharge, very vital. Next up, we have Dynamike's Hypercharge, and Dynamike has a very strong Hypercharge still. He throws out nukes. He cycles to it pretty quickly, and it's just really hard to miss with this Hypercharge. So for me, I think it still has to be S tier. Really strong Hypercharge on Dynamike. Next up, we have Rico's Hypercharge. Now, I haven't really gotten to test this one out or really seen it, but y'all remember Mutated Rico was so insanely strong, and it takes a Rico, I think, 2.5 supers to get to it. And Rico honestly cycles through supers relatively quickly, so I think this is a very strong Hypercharge. I'm going to put it below Colette in the A tier. Next up, we have Crow's Hypercharge, and a lot of people tend to hate on Crow's Hypercharge. I don't think it's as bad as what people think. It's not great, don't get me wrong, because it does take somewhat time to get to, because Crow's super is hard to get in general. But on the Heist safe, it's really devastating, and it can actually give decent team wipe potential. So for me, I don't think his Hypercharge is as bad as people think. I'm actually going to put it in the bottom of the B tier. Next up, we have Miko's Hypercharge, and for me, it's an easy F tier. I don't find any value in this Hypercharge whatsoever. Like, once you land with Miko, it's pretty easy to avoid his super nowadays. But when you drop on like a tank, you're not going to kill them anyways, and it's a very tanky meta. I've really never gotten great value from this Hypercharge, and it's the same thing with the next Hypercharge, Pearls. I still don't have Pearls Hypercharge, but it's terrible. It sucks. It knocks people away from the super, and I feel like Pearl's Hypercharge is really hard to get, because the way you play Pearl in a lot of game modes, especially Bounty and Knockout, is you just sit in a bush, wait for your heat to ramp up, and then if you need to use your super on an aggro, you can, but that kind of just destroys her heat. It's only decent against Kit, her super, but you almost will never get her Hypercharge, and her Hypercharge sucks. Like, it leaves that burning trail that enemies won't walk into, and when you knock them back, they're probably going to die from her super anyway. So I just don't see, it doesn't make any sense to me. And another one that I just never have seen potential is Brock's. I'm going to put it above Miko's. But Brock's Hypercharge to me is just a worse version of his super. Like, it did get a decent damage buff, but it's really not that different from his normal super. He just throws a bunch of rockets. I think they need to give it a big damage buff. Like, I think it does 750 per rocket. Maybe make it like 1,000 or 1,200. It needs to pack a punch. Because right now, it's honestly worse, like I said, than his normal super. It's just, I don't see value in this Hypercharge. Next up, we have Bell's Hypercharge. Bell's Hypercharge is so boring, but it's not that bad because it's almost guaranteed to hit a marked person, and that damage boost from her super or from the Hypercharge is nice. I don't think it's as bad as what people think, but it's D tier best. Like, it doesn't change the game like other Hypercharges. Next up, we have Edgar's Hypercharge, a vital Hypercharge for a brawler like Edgar. It absolutely is needed. It is very good for team wiping, and Edgar is pretty much an F tier brawler without this Hypercharge. So for me, it's easily S tier. I'm going to put it above Dynamite's, below Sandy's. Next up, we have Gale's Hypercharge. Gale's currently bugged with a super, but a lot of people are saying his Hypercharge is insanely strong, and I agree with them. The knockback on the Hypercharge super is crazy, and I feel like for me, Gale does not take that long to cycle supers, especially in a tanky meta like this. Gale's Hypercharge has been very strong. So for me, I don't think it's completely game-breaking like the S tier ones, but it's got to be in the A tier. I'm going to put it right above Rico's, below Colette's. Next up, we have Colt's Hypercharge, and Colt's Hypercharge is just the abomination of just mid. Like, all it does is it makes us super wider. That damage does go crazy, though, especially when the speed boost, but just a wider super, like, it does make it a little bit easier to hit, but that's kind of it. Like, I don't see much value in a Hypercharge like this, so it's going to go in the D tier. I'm going to put it above Shelly's, but that's kind of it. Next up, we have Spike's Hypercharge, and Spike's Hypercharge is good. It does make a big, nice circle that's pretty much unavoidable, but I feel like as meta's been developing, Spike's getting worse and worse, and he keeps getting these nerfs, so his Hypercharge gets less value because it is a little bit harder to cycle, and he got that recent damage nerf. So for me, still a decent Hypercharge. I'm going to put it in the B tier right above Fang's, but I don't think it's as good as it used to be. Next up, we have Maisie's Hypercharge, and Maisie has been such a bad brawler ever since they nerfed her supercharge rate that I just don't play her anymore. Just, like, it's really hard to get that first super, and she still has a very strong Hypercharge, but other than that, it's really hard to get in the metas like this because Maisie just can't cycle the supers that like she used to anymore. So, but her Hypercharge though is still strong if you get it. It can be very much a team wipe almost every time, but you really have to use it correctly. In a tank meta though, it is going to be a lot better, but it's nowhere near as strong as it used to be. But it's still going to be in the B tier for me, right below Jackie's. Still a very good Hypercharge. Next up, we have Max's Hypercharge. And Max's Hypercharge is just insanely broken in terms of team synergy. Like a 75% supercharge rate with this Hypercharge, which allows you to get to the next Hypercharge. And Max's super is already one of the best in the game, especially for team synergies. Just the team synergies with the Hypercharge is unmatched. It's easily probably the best Hypercharge in the game right now. Putting it above Frank's, it is such a good Hypercharge. Max is extremely meta with this Hypercharge. I'm surprised she didn't even get nerfed. Next up, we have Lou's Hypercharge. And Lou, even though he did get that supercharge rate nerf a while ago, still has a very strong Hypercharge. Like, his Hypercharge is pretty much essential for Lou because an instant freeze is almost a guaranteed kill, especially in a tank meta like this. Now, it is a little bit harder to cycle to, but for me, it's definitely still going to be in the A tier. And I'm going to put it right below Gale's. So, could be S tier, could argue, but I think A tier is fair. Next up, we have Angelo's Hypercharge. Now, I haven't really tested it because when it first came out, you really couldn't get the Hypercharge because Angelo with this recent nerf. But now it did get buffed a little bit, and it is a decent Hypercharge overall. Like, his super moves with him, and you can be really aggressive with Angelo. But other than that, I don't think his Hypercharge gives that much value. It's a little bit harder to cycle. But I'm going to put it above Bulls in the C tier because I don't really know much about it right now. Next up, we have Jesse's Hypercharge. And Jesse's Hypercharge is very similar to Nita's right now, where it takes little to no time to cycle, and a 10k turret that you have to waste ammo on and deal with the shots is just annoying. And in Heist, it can completely obliterate the safe. So for me, it's going at the bottom of the S tier. It's really, really good. Next up, we have Cordelius' Hypercharge. Now, it does take a while to cycle, especially with the nerfs he's been getting. He still has an amazing Hypercharge. It literally will slow the enemy down in the Shadow Realm. It's basically a guaranteed kill, no matter what. Or you can just run away with them and gem grab. You have all the gems, just super them, and you're gone. It's over. But I don't think it's 100% needed, but it's definitely a strong Hypercharge. So for me, it's going to be right below Maisie's in the B tier. Next up, we have El Primo's Hypercharge, one of the most overrated Hypercharges in my opinion. I really don't see that great value in his Hypercharge. Like, it's supposed to make it like bigger and knock enemies up, but most of the time it just feels like a normal super. Like, it's nice for the stat buffs, but honestly, his Hypercharge sucks. It's going to the bottom of the D tier. I don't really see much value in it. Next up, we have Tick's Hypercharge, and Tick's Hypercharge is I guess. Like, I have it, but I used it for the mutations for a brief period once I got Tick's mutation. But it takes a very long time to cycle, and it's just so predictable. Like, a lot of the good players can literally easily just destroy the head and avoid it. Now, if it does hit, that's a lot of damage, but the chances of it hitting are slim to zero. So for me, it's got to be a D tier Hypercharge. I'm putting it below. I'm going to put it above Gene's, below Ems's. Next up, we have Leon's Hypercharge, and Leon is really, really good with this Hypercharge. He needs it. It's a mechanically broken Hypercharge to go invisible and stay invisible when he's attacking. It does take a while to cycle, but you will get the Hypercharge in a game. Sometimes you might even get a couple, but it just depends on how long it takes you to get that first super. But for me, still an S tier, easily going above Edgar's, below Sandy's. And lastly on the list is Rose's Hypercharge. Rose's Hypercharge did recently get a buff to its charging rate. It does cycle a little bit faster. I don't think it's mechanically a broken Hypercharge, but I think it's easily one of the most balanced Hypercharges in the game. It's not broken, it's not weak. Either way, Rosa with her super is already hard to kill. This just makes her even harder to kill. Basically impossible. So for me, it's going to go in the B tier. I'm going to put it right below Barley's, and that's going to be the tier list. Let me know in the comments, agree, disagree, overrated one, underrated one, what you guys think down below. But that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.